Hello, everyone. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. You are watching live player ratings for Everton 0, Arsenal 1. You guys, we have broken the curse. We have broken the curse. It was not pretty. It was not pretty. It was not free flowing. It was not anything out of, what people wanted to see, which was Arsenal really scoring a lot of goals and being super attacking and all that kind of stuff. But we got the job done. It's our second game on the road where we beat a team 1-0, and just a good away performance in terms of defensive solidity, not giving away silly opportunities, things like that. But there's still questions around Arsenal and the attack, whether or not we're getting the most out of the attack. Why are we not looking as free flowing? Is it just the other team have the opportunity to stop us because they're sitting deeper? Or are there other reasons that are keeping us from getting to where we were last season? I think a lot of people are hoping to see the free flowing, exciting football from Arsenal last season. And in this game, like every other game this season, we've seen maybe one or two moments of that. But for the most part, it's Arsenal sitting, at the halfway line, trying to probe, trying to find an opening, trying to find where the seam is, trying to be really precise, and it just kind of ends up with, unfortunately, a little bit of the shoe horseshoe of death. It ends with Arsenal kind of, maybe overpassing and overdoing it. And it's not fun to watch. It's not exciting. It's not fun to watch. So I do think there's questions, people are concerned, but you can think of it one of two ways. Arsenal are, getting results and grinding out results despite not playing as good as they possibly can. And at some point, when all the pieces make sense and people have played together for longer periods of time, it'll all click. Or something's not right. And it just depends on how you think about things. Personally, for me, I'm thinking that some players just haven't kicked into gear yet. Some of our stars are not really having their best performances yet. There are some players that are trying to find their feet. But ultimately, as long as we're getting the results, we give ourselves an opportunity to get to that next level without freaking out. If you lose this game, there's so much pressure on the Tottenham game. There's still pressure on the Tottenham game, but you go into it level on points, just a couple points behind Manchester City, and you put yourself in a good position to go into it feeling like it's not the end of the world, And so I think there's still questions around how we get the best out of the attack, and did we recruit properly, all those types of things. But clean sheets away from home, we do that. We do that. And we had a debut for David Raya. We'll talk about that as well. And Fabio Vieira played at Goodison Park. And guess what? The world didn't end. Just like I told you guys, everybody was making a big deal out of nothing. I thought, all things considered, Fabio Vieira had a good game today. He had some chances where he should have definitely put the ball in the back of the net, or at least taken a shot a little bit sooner. But all in all, he wasn't getting ran over in midfield by anybody. He made a good account of himself. And I do think that when you have 80% possession, you do need to pick a team that kind of puts you in a position to do your best with the ball. And Fabio does that. It's a shame that Martinelli didn't get to stay on the pitch, because I think the combination of Martinelli and Vieira really works. And early on with Trossard and Fabio Vieira, you could see that there was some confusion there. But ultimately, again, Fabio Vieira is not a bum. May have convinced yourself of that because he wasn't perfect in his first season. But that guy knows how to play, so I was happy for him as well. Let's see what you guys are saying. Blaze is saying that, hi, Jess, I didn't watch the games. It seems like you are not happy about the performance today. That's not what I said. It was okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. So all in all, I'm happy that we got the result that we deserved. We deserved to win the game because we put in the most of the effort to try to win the game. We didn't just sit back and try to eat off of counterattacks. We were trying to be good with the ball, try to find those little spaces, little gaps in their defense. And they were sitting in a deeper block, so that is difficult. But my eyes don't deceive me. We are not playing to the same level that we were playing last season. And ideally, you want to get to that to that place. We're not scoring enough goals, we're not creating enough chances, and a lot of our goals, including the one that we scored today, came from a set piece. Now, I've been saying this since the beginning of the season, like most of the goals that we're scoring at this point are either first phase or second phase off of a set piece and or a penalty. And so in open play, we are struggling to create chances and to create moments where players are 1v1 with the goalkeeper. And some of that may be because we're playing against deep blocks, but we played against deep blocks last season and still were able to open teams up. So there is a little bit of something, but we got the 3 points. So that's kind of all that matters right now, because that gives you the opportunity to like analyze it with your eyes wide open. Sometimes when you don't get the result that you feel like you deserve, everything becomes negative. That's not negative. And everything that we saw today was not negative. Actually, there was a lot of good in there. But if you ask me if Arsenal are playing well right now, I would say we're not playing bad, but we're not playing good either, if that makes sense. It's a good away performance. Nashville says Jesus getting match fitness again should help us against low blocks. Kandwani says it was a solid away. Clock Orange says we are playing very different tactics to the last season. We are methodical and passing with purpose. It takes time before it clicks, need more games. Dark Side of the Moon says, just speaking pure facts, after 5 games, I would say top 4 is more likely. However, my ambition is we should and must challenge for the league. Christopher says, great win. Exactly. Like, it's one of those where, I don't think we need to put any more on it than what it is. We don't need to go out there and say like that was a perfect performance. It definitely was not. I do think if we get that initial goal that's called offside, things change a lot from there. I think you get an earlier goal, you're able to, kind of put more pressure on them and they crumble, but they had something to hold on to for a longer period of time because they were at 0-0. And so I think that's unfortunate that we weren't able to get that goal. But Kandwani is saying a solid controlled performance. And you are seeing that Arsenal are controlling the games a lot more. Our games are more boring than they were last season. Last season, every game was exciting. Like literally, we never had boring games. Either we were completely wiping teams away or we just gave them enough of a nugget to actually think that they could win it. And then we came back with a response, or we scored in the 90th minute or whatever. And so we were a lot more exciting, I think, for the neutral and for Arsenal fans last season. But this season, all of our games have kind of followed the same script. From Nottingham Forest on, we have all the control, all of the possession. We're pretty much sitting at the halfway line, passing it around, trying to find openings. We're not getting that many chances. And it could be something that just needs time. But I also just feel like some individuals have not clicked yet. I'm watching players, like I think almost everybody in the back line looks like they looked last season. Ben White, Gabriel, Saliba, they kind of look like themselves. Zinchecko's coming back in and he kind of looks like Zinchecko. I think things from the back line forward, I'm seeing some performances from players that are usually a lot better than they are now, but it could just be a little bit of hangover from last season, or just they're not in form. And hopefully at some point they do come into form, because we really need that. S90 says, I'm still relatively calm about our start. I'll take ugly wins if we click into gear in the second half of the season. And that's all it really is. It's like at some point we do expect for it to click, but there's still a chance that, maybe it doesn't. That's all I'm saying, but it should click. This team is good enough. Like, we've definitely done a lot better in terms of like having enough depth and stuff like that. So it should. But we broke the curse, which is super important. We have not beat them since 2017. And so, being able to break that, I think is super important without any relatively like being scared, or like Everton created next to nothing. Like, we didn't create a lot, but we controlled the game. They created like nothing. Had they got a little smash and grab, kind of like, last minute set piece, that would have felt so unfair considering the way that the game went. But it was a very controlled situation where we controlled the game. We were under very little threat. It was just whether or not we were going to find the goal and whether or not we were going to make a mistake to allow them in. And so, yeah, like, that's just kind of where we're at right now. It's we got the 3 points and we broke the curse, which is super important. We're just wondering if it's gonna click into something that looks a little bit more like last season. Samuel says, "Yeah, finally." I know, finally, finally, finally. Charles says, "We lost there last season. For now, I'll take it." Exactly. Boy says, "It's impossible to play the same level as last season, whatever role that is that Xhaka does that has no name isn't all that simple a thing to replace." So if we're saying that there's no way that we can play to the same level, if not better than what we played last season, then basically why are we talking about challenging for the title? I don't understand that. Like, we should be able to get to that next level. And if you're saying that the reason why we can't is because we have not replaced that Xhaka position properly, then we haven't recruited properly. And so we need to have a conversation about recruitment, because we did spend 65 million on a midfielder and we spent 105 million on another. So I would imagine that those two players combined should be able to take us to the next level. If they're not, then, there's a conversation about recruitment. I'm not sure I really buy into this idea that there's no way we're going to play. Like, we should just not expect to play as good as we did last season. If those are our expectations, then why are people talking about challenging for the title? I don't understand that. The Sheikh says 100% agree, Jess. We have to improve if we want to win the league. So yeah, exactly. Ampere says, congratulations on today's win, all Gooners, onto PSV on Wednesday. Exactly. So let's go ahead and get into the nitty gritty, though, because we do have to talk about the elephant in the room. And that is that we talked about this the other day. When did we think Raya would get his first start? And I said, would it be against Everton or against PSV or against Brentford? And most people said against Brentford or PSV. It ended up being today against Everton. And when I tell you guys that I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised at the same time, because during international break or before international break, Sammy McBell did say that Arteta was looking to give Raya a run of games. And Arteta is not shy about doing anything. If he wants to make a change, he usually does it, whether you like it or not. Now, I do think that there was a smoother way to transition Ramsdale out, which wouldn't have been so out in the open. And that would have been to either give him PSV, Raya give PSV, or Brentford. But he decided to go for a Premier League game, which I do think put more pressure on this game than maybe we needed. We ended up winning the game and being under very little pressure. But I'll tell you this right now, listening to just the commentators and all the talking heads before the game, watching it on NBC, their narrative was that if we had lost that game, it was going to be because we did not keep Ramsdale in that goal, because they had already decided that we had created an unnecessary problem. That was, I think one guy said that Ramsdale's body language looked as if he had been defeated and there's problems in the dressing room. How his ass could know that without being anywhere near anybody at Arsenal, I do not know. He's just looking from his box telling us that we have problems in our dressing room. And then you have Lee Dixon and Robbie Earl saying that, Ramsdale is the better goalkeeper. And, talking about, instead of talking about anything else, they only talked about that. And for me, it's just like, I'm so glad we won the game, because even if it was a shot or a penalty or something that didn't even have anything to do with Raya, it would have been because of that. But now that you've made that decision, people are already assuming that Ramsdale's coming back into the game or back into the team against PSV. I don't actually agree with that. I think this is a full-on switch. I think the idea that we're resting Ramsdale, a goalkeeper that goalkeepers don't need rest, we're resting him for PSV, and they need to be able to, like, Raya needed some minutes. That's just never how the goalkeeper, situation has ever been. And so this feels like a slow and methodical dropping from Mikel Arteta. And it was just like, okay, I got the international break and then boom, he's in. I would not be surprised if Raya was in the goal against PSV, but the best thing that could have happened in this game is for us to win it, because the narrative of this game before it even started was that we were making a huge mistake with the goalkeeper situation, and that if we were to lose, it was going to be because of that, no matter what. And so I think this is a dropping and a changing of our number one goalkeeper situation. Some people have bought into the idea that this is some new, new era goalkeeping situation where they're going to share time. I don't know, y'all. What do you guys think? Dale says, like for like matches, Arsenal actually ahead of last season, 13 points to 12. Mr. says, I don't see a big deal because bottom 10 put Raya in. Azat says Raya looked very assured, had little to do, but you could see that he is better on the ball. Pizennet.org says Ramsdale is still the number one goalkeeper. GN says you're wrong. Ike says Raya was super composed. Our defense was much better, in my opinion. He didn't have much to do. I'm having a hard time. I would need to see us play against a better team to. I don't want to gas Raya too much. I do think he looked composed and decent on the ball. I think we did a lot more in terms of Zinchecko receiving and Rice receiving back to goal with somebody on the back of them and being able to find those passes out wide. Those are things that we had completely stopped doing with Ramsdale. Ramsdale, I think, gave away the ball a couple of times trying to do that. I remember against Southampton was like the most egregious time where the space just wasn't there for Zinchenko to receive, and he literally passed it straight to Southampton, and they put it in the back of the net. During the run-in in the first minute of the game, we had completely stopped playing that way, where somebody would come in centrally with pressure and pass it out wide and relieve us from that pressure. And so we did a lot of that. He did look, he had a couple of claims as well that were good, but ultimately Everton didn't offer anything. So it's hard to see whether or not he was like so much better than Ramsdale, if that makes sense. But also like just his distribution, it was clean. It was clean. Kafunso says Raya knows he's better. Muyiwa says Raya's distribution was way better. So was his handling of crosses. Michael says, I think you'll see both Raya and Ramsdale have a run of 7 to 8 games at a time, not necessarily rotation, but I can't see either keeper becoming a FA Cup or Carabao keeper. So keep an eye on this. We will definitely keep an eye on this. I do think that, it's a situation that's a little bit uncomfortable because it's not something that we typically see. But what I am happy about is that the goalkeeper that we've recruited to come in definitely fits our style of play, has very little to do, but doesn't make a mess of situations that should not be a mess. Now, nothing too bad happened in this game, but just he was composed on the ball, looked ready to go. Like it was just like, okay, at least we know that we have a goalkeeper that can do the things that we want him to do. Is he better than Ramsdale? I think like if my overall opinion on Raya is that he is probably better than Ramsdale, but is he better in the Arsenal shirt yet? I don't know if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and get into these player ratings. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. There's 300 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Love you guys so much. You guys are just amazing. You guys make these shows so much fun. And seeing like new faces, seeing like old faces, it's great. And I know it's not faces, it's your names, but like those are your faces to me. If I recognize them, I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so. Yeah. So anyways, we will start off with Raya. So composed on the ball, good under pressure, had very little to do. I think, had a couple of decent claims, but again, he wasn't under massive pressure. So I think in his debut, I'm going to give him a 7, clean sheet. He didn't do anything spectacular, but also he didn't have any howlers or anything like that. And, I don't think he encouraged Everton in any way, if that makes sense. And so I'm going to give Raya just a 7. We just kind of spoke about him quite a bit, so I don't want to go too far into it, because it's just, he didn't have much to do. And I think that that's significant to me is like, I want to see him in a game where he's under more pressure. But I think all in all, that was a really good debut from Raya. So I'm going to give him a 7. Let's see what you guys are going to say in the comments. Guys, get into the comments and let me know what you guys are thinking. Let's see, I'm going to read these out. Aman says a solid debut. Anton Dunn says 7 sounds about right. Ken says Raya 7. Ash says felt very calm with him in the net. Aman says 8. Boy says 8. Din says 8. SG says 3 points is everything. It is. Azat says Klopp was right when he claimed that Brentford has a number 10 at goal. Din says 8. Oh yeah, I got you that time. Keenan says 7 is good. Alexander says 7. Ivy says 7.5. Saksham says 7.3215. Very specific. But yeah, something between a 7 and an 8. I'm not going to put more mustard on it than it needs to be. But solid debut, clean sheet, looked good and composed on the ball. Didn't encourage Everton in any way, and looked very like he looked very clued in on what was going on. He didn't fall asleep or anything like that. So I liked it. It was nice. So White, I would say that I think he had a really good game. I thought, besides maybe a couple of poor switches that got cut out at the end of the first half, I thought his combinations on the right-hand side, I actually thought on our right-hand side, he was our best player. And I think sometimes, Ben White, he goes like missing on that side, not missing, but like he's not the most prominent name. Odegaard and Saka are the most prominent names on that side. I actually thought he was the best performer out of everybody on our right-hand side. I thought on the ball, composed, in tight spaces, he was good. He was jumping in front of his attacker, intercepting the ball. He lost it. He won it back. He was just a very good performance from Ben, where I thought he had his usual yearly Man United mare. He always comes back and snaps back the next game and looks like the Ben that we know him to be. So for me, I thought Ben had a really good performance. I thought he had some good crosses into the box as well. I think when Ben's having a good game, he also doesn't go like brain dead when he gets into the final third. Like sometimes I'm like, your crosses are just off, man. But today I thought low and hard. He also had that nice chip to the back post that can't forget who messed that up, but he had a nice chip to the back post. And I thought whoever was back there should have done a better job. All in all, Ben, he's just one of those that he tends to put in 7, 8s almost every single week beyond, like, unless it is the Man United game where he has to mark Rashford. He's really good. So I'm going to give him a 7.5. Probably could go a little bit higher for him, but I thought it was just a very typical Ben White performance where, was good going forward, good at the back. Good performance from him. I liked him. Thought he was good. Aman says White was much better today than against United. He's always bad against United. I'm sorry. But I always kind of like expect it, if that makes sense. His bag is just not against the best quick wingers in the league. It's just not his bag. He gets cooked a couple of times, but I come to expect it. Alexander says an 8. Saksham says White is so average, 5 at max. Ben says Ben White is a standard 7. Aman says White was better today. Oh, yeah, I read that already. John says Ben slows the game so much. I don't even know if it was just Ben. I think everybody was a little pedestrian on the ball and taking a long time, taking a lot of touches. But because our right-hand side is so, everybody on that side seems to be a little bit on a lower ebb, and nobody's moving as quickly. And also they're paying a lot more attention to that right-hand side, trying to make sure that they put as many numbers over there as they possibly can. I do think it's more difficult on that side to find those patterns of play when they're in those deep blocks than it was last season. I think people have really caught on to the patterns that we use on that right-hand side. And so Ben is on the ball trying to figure out what he's going to do. And we don't want to give the ball away. And so they're just standing on the ball, and so it is a little bit frustrating. But I also look about like what's going on in front of him. Literally, like they are doing everything in their power to make sure Odegaard and Saka are not finding those little angles and stuff like that. So everybody is doing that. You know what I mean? Everybody is kind of doing that. But I understand like Ben can sometimes really stand on the ball. So I get it. The Shake says White 7. Samuel says solid 8. Let's see. I just got like really hungry. Mouser says 7 for White. Aman says I've clicked on that like 5 times. Ben says, yeah, so I did these already. Okay, so I don't know what happened. It's like I got hungry and then I went brain dead. Sorry. Denver says I do not know how to. do want to know how we tend to look so sluggish after international break. I'll be really honest with you. I don't actually know if I expected us to look any different than we did today. I don't think we looked any different or any more sluggish than we usually did, like than we did against Nottingham Forest, than we did against Fulham. I think this is just how we're playing this season. But I get what you're saying. The Edry says Benjamin was one of our best today. I agree. Monk says 7.5. So a standard Ben White performance, like nothing like it wasn't like spectacular, but it definitely was like what you want from a player that's a consistent performer. Like you want them to continue to like rep up those sevens, eights, and he tends to do that. I mean, he's not like a sparkly player. Like he's never going to get as much love as like Saliba. We're going to talk about right now. I need to rewatch the game because I'm not sure, you know, Saliba did it that much. Like I know he stopped a couple of their attacks, like in terms of slowing them down. They had a difficult time getting around him. And one thing that really frustrated me about the commentators that I was listening to is that they continuously kept saying that they wanted Everton to be extremely physical with us because we don't like the physical game and all that nonsense about like if you beat Arsenal up, then they won't be able to withstand the pressure and all this kind of stuff. And they kept egging it on and really wanted them to like get in on us. But then when an Everton player would be physical with us and one of our players would go down, then they'd be like, oh, just get up. And so the thing is if you want Everton to be super physical, then when they hit us, you should not expect us to just say, you know what, that's fine. Slap me in the face. That's okay. Elbow me in the nose. That's okay. Um, you know, like just that reducer on my ankle doesn't matter. I'll just jump straight up. Like it was a very strange dynamic of the commentator saying that he wanted them to be extra physical, but when they did get physical, he just wanted the Arsenal players to just get on with it. And I think the benefit of having a team being overly physical with you is that you can egg those collisions and make sure you get the foul, make sure you get a yellow card, make sure you give yourself a little bit more time for your team. And Arsenal should not do those things because the commentator wants us to hurry up and get up because he wants Everton to score a goal. Fuck you. I'm glad Saliba went down and held his face. I'm glad Gabriel went down and held his face. I'm glad Fabio Vieira did it as well. Because if you're going to be overly physical, we're going to take more time off the clock. Fuck you. Like, it was so annoying that he kept saying it. I'm like, well, if they're going to be physical, you should expect us to go down. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's just so annoying, So, anyways, but Saliba, I thought, didn't have much to do, but I thought he dealt with Beto quite well. Him and Gabriel did. I was having nightmares about this guy. Like, I was like, the first time I watched him play against Sheffield, I was like, oh my God, no, they got a striker. They got a striker. He's one of those physical, like old school ones, but like not shit. But I thought him and Gabriel actually did a good job managing him and making sure he didn't get much joy. So I'm actually just going to give Saliba like a 7. It wasn't like Saliba's like most amazing performance, but I thought he was good. Again, you just want players to have solid performances, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be anything special. Keenan says 7. Let's see. James says Saliba was okay, nothing out of the ordinary. I agree. Like it wasn't anything like fantastic. It was what it was. They didn't have much to do. Anton Dunn says 6.5 for Saliba. And the other thing is like Saliba wasn't doing as much dictating from the halfway line. A lot of that was going through Rice. Rice was dropping deep into the back line and he was doing a lot of the orchestrating from that position. So we didn't even see a lot of Saliba on the ball today. And one thing that I was not thrilled with Saliba against United was him taking the ball and dribbling out of his pocket and leaving us exposed. And so let Declan do that job. And if we need Saliba to do it, fair. But I kind of liked him just doing the center back job today. Limit your responsibilities and don't have any like unnecessary oopsies, DAJ says Saliba 6. Let's see. Boy says 8 for Saliba. He makes it look so easy. And maybe I'm just numb to him and his good, performances are so often that it just feels like whatever. But I'm okay with it. Saksham says 7 for Willie and Gabby. I also thought Gabriel had a very good game too. 7. Samuel says 7.5, but doesn't mean he did bad. I don't think 7.5 is even a bad score, to be honest. Like, not great, but not bad. I think that's just, I don't know. Like, I think those are fine. And I'm actually going to give Gabrielle pretty much the same thing. I think as a pairing, they're definitely still our best pairing. Like, there's nothing really, um, nobody really that gives us the same solidity and speed and physicality back there. And I think for a team that's always criticized for not wanting to be physical, I don't actually think they watch our games, because if you watch Gabriel and Saliba and Ben White, they're never really shirking the physical side of the game. So I think that that's just a myth from back in the day. But Gabriel and Saliba as a pair were very good, very solid, didn't have much to do, but they handled the main threat that they needed to, which was Beto. And so I was very happy with the two of their performances. This actually came from Hit. I didn't see it earlier, but thank you so much for your super chat. Says, we peaked early last season. Hope is vice versa this season. Hoping that as well. Like I was saying earlier on in the show, I really, really, really am hoping that we're just starting off slow and working through things, and it all clicks after December. Like, we did peak too early, and we were playing as good as we possibly could in preseason. Ash says 45 to 70 minutes, best football of the season, total control. Cannot wait to rewatch this game without any emotion, because I do think we had some decent passages of play. We were composed. We were kind of like confident in things that we were doing. If we could just find those seams a little bit more frequently and make the right decisions in the final third, meaning shoot when you should shoot and pass when you should pass, we should be fine. Thank you guys so much for your super chats. I really appreciate those. Let's see what you guys are saying. I am starving. Whew. Ben says, Gabriel Magalhaes had a couple of shaky moments, but apart from that, he looked mostly good. So a 6.5 should do. I think the main one was when it got to the end of the game and we were trying to manage it and see the game out. He had that one moment where he brought it down, and instead of just kind of like getting it out, he passed it straight to the Everton player, and like a better player probably runs him over and gets in on goal. And so we have to not encourage them in any sort of way. Everton are a terrible, terrible, terrible team. That could have went wrong for us. So yeah, but at the same time, I get it. Like, you make maybe one mistake a game, and he wasn't punished for it, so it is what it is. Keenan says that ball to Jesus was nasty though, and could have easily been a goal. Gabriel 7.5. I like that score. That pass by itself could give him another half point. I think Jesus should do better there. Maybe a fully fit Gabriel Jesus is in on goal and just chips the goalkeeper or goes around him or whatever. But once they started pushing a little bit more for a goal, those spaces started to open up. And so maybe if that goal had stood that Martinelli scored, then we would have been able to see more of those situations earlier on. But yeah, that was an excellent ball. And like, when people say Gabriel Magalhaes is not good on the ball, I think what they're saying is he's not a midfielder on the ball. I think we've gotten so spoiled with like Pep Ball and all these ball playing center backs that like we just don't appreciate like a traditional center back that's just decently good on the ball. And Gabriel's one of those who he's not like inept. Like, he's not somebody that cannot be on the ball at all. He's just not a midfielder on the ball. And I think that's fine, So I love Gabriel. And he also came back from like Bolivia and Peru and played loads of minutes for Brazil. And like, I don't know if you got like, they had oxygen masks on, like they were up there with like no air. He comes back in such good physical fitness. Like, one of the things about Gabriel that's so underrated is his fitness and his ability to play 90 minutes day in, day out. Availability is so important. So I'm happy that he looked good and solid in the game. That's all we really needed, was for him to be solid. Samuel says Gabby is getting very smart with his defense, 7.5. The Sheikh says Gab 6. Keenan says Gabriel looked tired. I think he needs to be managed better this season. We got to have faith in Kiwis. Yeah, I didn't think he looked tired, but fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, center backs were good. Ben White was good. So let's talk a little bit about Zinchecko, who I want to say like had a typical Zinchecko game where he had some really nice passes into the final third, some good switches of play, like not really switches of play, but he had some really good like little drop passes into like Martinelli and Fabio Vieira and Trossard. Like, he was receiving it from Raya and from deep in midfield. He was doing a lot of the Zinny stuff that we're used to him doing. But in my group chats, what I will say is that there was a little bit of like fear because he does tend to give the ball away 1, 2, 3 times a game in very dangerous areas, pretty much like even when he's not under pressure. And that's the thing about Zinchenko is that he's kind of always going to be a high risk, high reward player for us. I think as long as he's passing well and giving us those little openings and finding space and all that kind of stuff, it's fine. But you always know there's going to be 1 or 2 times a game where he just gives the ball away in a dangerous area. And sometimes we get punished and sometimes we don't. I think Zinchenko was okay today. Like, I don't think it was his best game, but I can also maybe give a pass to everybody on the left-hand side because once again, we had a changed left-hand side. For the last couple of games, it's been Kai Havertz. And Kai Havertz, every time he played with a different left back. This time, no Kai Havertz, and it's Fabio. You have Martinelli for the first couple of minutes. Martinelli comes off, it's Trossard. And then Gabriel Jesus, when he comes on, he tends to drift to the left-hand side where Eddie is nowhere near it. So I can give almost the left-hand side, like the fact that he even looked decent today, I can just say like that is good enough for me because the left-hand side has been kind of a problem. And so Zinchenko for me is still starting left back, and there's no real, I probably would have started Tommy today, but Zinchenko starting and Tommy finishing, that's fine for me. But I think he was just okay today. Like it was a typical Zinny game where you have that 1 or 2 passes where you're like, damn, I need you to like straighten up. So I'm going to give him a 6.5. High risk, high reward player. When he's on it, you love him. When he makes those mistakes, you're cussing him. Like that's just what it is. Such a good player, but fuck, like sometimes it scares me. Boy says Zinchenko was good today. He was tasked with being very creative. And he was very creative, all things considered. Yeah, I agree. Aman says Zinchenko a 7. Denver says, I think this was the type of game where you needed Zinni as a left 8. Everton just stank the place out. People keep telling, it's like, well, why do you want Zinchenko in midfield? He basically plays midfield anyway. I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of similar to like Thomas Partey at right back. It's Partey in midfield, but not really in midfield. So Zinchenko does operate in midfield for us. He does. But I still think that like I would love to see him at left 8, just a little bit pushed forward a little bit more. But the fact that it hasn't happened for me makes it feel like that's just not a position where Arteta sees him. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. There's 260 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Monk says another 7. Keenan says Zinchenko 7.5. He really supported Vieira and Trossard's link play. Martin says Zinni deserves a higher score. Fair enough. Aman says Zinchenko 7. So I said 6.5, a little bit lower. Some people were a little bit higher, but somewhere between 6.5, 7, I think is probably where he's at. So yeah. Aska actually, or Arca says, I thought Zinchenko was man of the match. That's interesting. He's not my man of the match, but fair enough, fair enough. Again, if your defense is pretty much all at 7, 7.5, whatever, then you probably had a decent game, so I'm happy with that. Declan Rice, he only had one moment where I cussed him, and that was when he gave the ball away at the very top of the box, when again we were in that moment of like where we're trying to see out the game, but we also have the inability to hoof it long. We love to tiki-taka on like the edges of our box, and he did that and the ball got taken away. And luckily it didn't end up in like a goal, because I was like, if this ends up in a goal, he's going to get absolutely slammed. Beyond that, the guy was really good today. I thought early on, when some people were under hitting their passes and trying to get used to that dry ass pitch, he was hitting them with so much power. And I thought he just had like a very good Declan Rice game. Again, like your DMs are never going to get that much praise unless they're constantly tackling or they're constantly involved. But he stopped the fires that he needed to stop. The one thing I like about him, in contrast to Thomas Partey, is that he actually tackles. So he stops the counterattacks before they even happen. Where kind of Thomas, he kind of dives in, and like if you're past him, you're past him. Rice gets the tackle in. And so he discouraged them quite a few times when they tried to counter, and he just stopped them. I thought his passes on the right-hand side where he was connecting with Saka and Odegaard and White were very, very, very good. And for a player, again, that a lot of people were really worried about what he was going to do on the ball, I don't think we have much to worry about. Would I like to see him take a pop more earlier? Yes, I would. He only got done like one time by Decore. That shit happens. Like nothing really came from it. But good player, another good solid game for him. I thought he was one of our better performers. It's just Declan's world, and we're just fucking living in it. I mean, every time he steps on the pitch for us, it's just happy days. And again, there was a period of time where we couldn't even play a game confidently without Thomas Partey. And Thomas Partey has been out, and we've been relatively unfazed. That's not to say that we couldn't have played a game with the two of them in midfield and maybe done better, but you know, I do think that we're still playing at a relatively high level, considering that we have one of our better midfielders out for a significant amount of time. So for me, Rice is a 7.5. I want to see him take some more shots here and there. But again, like he just is so good. Like I want to see his comp from this game, because I think passing wise, he's not over. He's not. I think he's underrated. I don't want to overrate him, but he's definitely underrated. Good player. Good player. Love him. Tony says Rice at 8.5 dominated a physical midfield all by himself. Definitely was not getting overran. That's for fucking sure. C says good on field relationship between Rice and White becoming evident. That little pocket over on that side, he seems very comfortable, because basically Zinchecko manages the left pocket. Finding the combinations between like whoever's the left 8 and the left winger and stuff like that. Rice kind of supports, like Partey would, that right hand side a little bit more, and it just works. It just works for him. I think he was really, really good. Samuel says Declan gets an 8. I'm not missing Partey at this moment, and that's not to say that Partey is not an amazing player. It's just nice to not miss him as much. So yeah. Boy says I prefer a DM that goes unnoticed. Means that they are doing the job very well. He should probably give Rice a 9 for how solid he is. Okay, I'll give him a little bit of a higher score. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I'll give him an 8. I'll give him the highest score that everybody else had than anybody else so far. So yeah, there it goes. So there you go. Just to make y'all happy. T01 says they told us Rice has a left side bias. They were telling us a lot of stuff before. Even the commentator was saying, "Oh, Rice hasn't been at his best." And I'm like, "You don't watch us play." Like I'm so sure people don't watch us play, because he's been mustard. He hasn't been flashy or anything like that, but he's playing DM. Like, what is he supposed to do? Like, I don't get it. Anton Dunn says nobody should get over a 7.5 because it was Everton and they were mid. Fair enough. Iman says it's good to have 2 6s that offer us something different. We have 3 6s, actually. Rice gives us more control and helps us win the ball back, while Partey helps us accelerate the game better, plus helps us with the killer pass. Exactly. So it's nice to have multiple options there. I don't think this was by design, but at the same time, it's nice to have 3 DMs that kind of offer you different things. You have Rice, who's pretty versatile as well. So we're pretty well covered in that deep midfield position, which is great. GSM says Rice is an 8. He nullified, or Rice is his score is an 8. He nullified Decore, Gay, and Onana threats. Yeah, he did. CC, hey girl, said, I completely forgot about Partey. Weird feeling. Exactly. Like, and I think that's a good feeling. Not that he's not an important part of the squad, but we're just not in a constant panic of not having this guy. I mean, people thought we were going to get ran over today, and I thought Rice did a good job of making sure that we did it. That in combination with Declan Rice, or not Declan Rice, Ben White did a lot of the winning the ball back, and Saliba also. Like they all did a really good job. They really did not encourage Everton very much, kept the crowd quiet, which was good. It wasn't until like those last couple of minutes where they started piping up a little bit more, but you kind of expect that. Denver says, honestly, Rice has been our most consistent player so far. Yes, he has been. But at 100 million, you would expect him to be. Norma says, Rice is the Arteta 6, controls better. Boy says Rice is the DM we have been waiting for since Fabio Vieira was sold. Can't believe how good he is with each game. And he's been tasked with different things, like games where we're super dominant, games where we had to come from behind, games with like so much emotion attached to them. He's been in different scenarios. What I'm excited to see is Rice in the North London Derby and Rice against Manchester City. What I'm hoping is that a player like Rice gives you the edge against the teams that the games really mean something and there's a lot of emotion attached to it. The North London Derby, like I thought Rice out of most of our players in terms of Manchester United really stepped up in a game that's highly emotional, at least for the fans it is. Tottenham is going to be even more emotional, playing against a team that's playing on an immense high and is going to come to the Emirates and think that they're going to take 3 points. That's where Rice, I think, is going to make a big difference. He also needs to make a difference against Manchester City, who typically come to the Emirates and basically it's almost like we shouldn't have even played the game. We should have just given them 3 points and just saved everybody the time. Hopefully he makes us more competitive and more of a team that's not so easy to score against. That is my hope for Rice. But he's such a good player. Like, I was disappointed at the beginning of the game where they were doing the lead up, and obviously, like the cameraman, what they do is they pan across certain players for a certain amount of time in order to give the commentators enough time to talk about him. They did that with Rice, and they chose not to talk about Rice. Lee Dixon chose to talk about us celebrating, and I thought that was a real disappointing moment because Rice is not getting anywhere near as much, I think, conversation as he should. Had he had not scored that goal against Manchester United, I think the narrative will be that he's been average for us, which is totally untrue. Even without the goal against Manchester United, he's been so good. So yeah, loved it. Wild Child says, as good as Rice has been, I have mixed feelings. Partey is more creative and helps us play flow, especially his ability to find our eights in the pockets. Rice doesn't do that. He is more sideways. I implore you to watch Rice's comp for the Manchester United game. We were not free flowing, but he found so many passes in between the lines to our forwards and to our eights. I really implore you to watch that game because the narrative around Rice is that he only passes sideways. But if you actually look at his statistics, his forward passing percentage is actually right up there with anything that Thomas Partey has done. So it's a myth that he doesn't pass forward and he only passes sideways. I think Partey looks different than Rice on the ball. And then there's also like the slight difference in the way that we're playing this season where we want more control. I don't think we want to be as vertical as we were last season. I think we want to slowly kind of like nullify teams out of the game and rock them to sleep. And Rice is doing a lot more of that than Partey would. Partey definitely loves a line splitting pass. He loves finding players vertically. And Rice does do a lot of the like volume passes sideways, but the idea that he's a sideways passer is untrue because if you look at his forward passing percentages, they're right up there. And yeah, he's great. He's really great. But we still need Partey to come back and give us a little bit of something different. Dodge R says, Jess, we are not conceding chances, though we seem much more in control. We definitely are trying to control the game a little bit more. That is definitely true. John P says Rice is a baller. Exactly. So yeah, yeah, the guy is so good. And so I'll give him an 8. Obviously, I'm not going to go overboard because it was Everton and they were shit, so there you go. But yeah, let's go get into the more of the forward players. Odegaard's on my back. Like, this is my guy. Right. But I'm just going to say it like it is. Odegaard is not playing well right now. Not for Arsenal, at least. Not by his standards. And he's being dispossessed a lot more. He doesn't look sharp. He looks a little bit slower. And I think as a result, I just see the right-hand side being a lot less effective than it was last season. Not because we have the wrong players there, but because the players aren't playing at their highest level yet. And so for me, this was not a good Odegaard game. I actually think he was one of the not as good players out there. And when Odegaard's not playing well, we don't play well. I think he had that one chance. He had 2 chances where he had shots that went straight to the goalkeeper. He should have put at least one of those away. And yeah, disappointing, because if you're not going to be creative and you're not going to create as many chances, when you get those balls in those advantageous positions, you need to put them in the back of the net. You're our captain. You have to do it. This is not a great Odegaard game. He wasn't poor, but by his standards, this was not a great game for him. So I'm going to give him a 6. It just wasn't the vibes, it just wasn't the vibes. He gave the ball away too many times. He was kind of soft and weak on the ball too. And I just need to see more from him, because when you're watching a fantastic Odegaard game, you just know when you're watching one, because he's unplayable. Right now, he's not quite unplayable. He's playable, so I'm going to give Odegaard a 6. And I love the guy, but he needs to go to there's definitely more levels for him to go. The Sheikh says 6.5. Denver says 6 is fair. I'm going to say this wrong. Tashipiso? Sorry, I know I'm getting that wrong. I apologize for butchering your name. Says Odegaard 5.5. I'm kind of right there with you. Keenan says Saka is playing really wide, and the link play between Saka, Odie, and White has been subpar. Give it a few games. I agree. It hasn't been as good, but it'll click at some point. It always does. Let's see. John P. Says Saka and Odegaard are below par. Get them on form with Jesus starting, and we will be a different animal. And that's the thing. It's like we are performing relatively well with probably our 2 best players not at their best in any way, shape, or form. And so that is definitely, because at some point they will click into form. And again, these are players that even when they're not playing well, still come up with assists and key passes and good numbers. We know when we're watching an amazing Odegaard or Saka game, and we haven't seen one yet. And so it's yet to come, but it's not there yet. Martin N says Odegaard is 6. I agree. I think all of us are kind of on the same page. I love this, that we're kind of on the same page. Every time we do these, sometimes I'm we're way in different things, but I think we've all kind of watched the same game, which is great. Arca says, one thing I've noticed is this season defenders aren't giving Odegaard any time on the ball. It seems like the moment he gets the ball, there are 2 guys on him. And if I was the opposition coach, my main thing would be kick Saka, kick Odegaard, give them no time, shut down that right half space, because that is where our goals come from. Our left-hand side is not really our creative side. Our left-hand side is our finishing side, is our goal-scoring side. That's why you have Xhaka, or you had Xhaka and Martinelli on that side, because they arrive. And on that right-hand side, you have all the creation happening, and we create our openings on that side. We have got to figure out a way to be more creative on the left. One, is that they can't just shut down one side, but equally, Saka and Martin Odegaard are going to have to try to figure out a way to still be dangerous, even though teams are trying to stop them. And that's kind of the next level for this team is once you're marked, you're marked. And those 2 are definitely marked. And that's why there are Ballon d'Or nominees. They're not nominated for these things because they're average players. Everybody knows everything goes through those 2 players. They have all the data. They say if you stop Saka and Martin Odegaard, we have probably a better chance of getting something out of this game. If we could just get more out of the left 8, probably, and out of center forward, which that'll happen once Jesus is back in the fold. They won't be able to stop us. They'll just have to say, forget it. It is what it is. John P says we will have more space on Wednesday against Spurs. I agree. When we play against the likes of I believe when we play against Brighton, when we play against Spurs, when we play against any of the top 6 teams, we'll definitely have more space. But everybody beyond them, I think Villa will be quite open. Newcastle will be open. At least at St. James, they'll be open. So there will be games. There'll be tougher games, but there'll be more space. But the smaller teams, they know if they go toe-to-toe with us, they're finished. And so we just have to continue to knock down these deep blocks. That is our next vibe. DNC says Odie is a 6. I want to see him float across the front positions more. He has great connection with Saka and White, but float across to the left and center more. Jade says the ability to get the ball on the half turn and progress it progress with it is a valuable skill that Partey provides. Maybe Rice will eventually become that kind of player. They definitely have different strengths and weaknesses and things like that, for sure. And so does Jorginho, by the way, who I do think is always forgotten, almost like he's El Neni. That guy is not El Neni. That is a quality player as well. He just doesn't have the legs, right? So they all have things that help us in certain circumstances and other situations where they're maybe not the best. I still think Rice is probably our most complete number 6 right now, though. So yeah, Blaze says you can see the game against Crystal Palace that Declan Rice played some progressive passes. I don't get why some Arsenal fans are always trying to find something to complain. I don't know if it's complain. I just think when you're used to seeing somebody like Thomas Partey and he's always been one of our best players, it's hard to watch somebody else in that position that doesn't look, move, and act like that player. So Thomas Partey is so elegant on the ball and the ball's between the lines. And he's just a very, to upgrade on Thomas Partey is very hard. Just like it would have been difficult to do with Xhaka too, because those two players are experienced. They have many layers to them. And those two together in midfield are basically like a top 2, top 3 midfield pairing. And so upgrading upon them is difficult, because if somebody doesn't have those exact qualities, it's hard to see if it's upgraded or not. But I do think Declan Rice is more complete. Like, I think he has more to his game that allows us to control games a little bit better, where Thomas Partey might be just marginally better than Rice right now in terms of flair and getting on the ball and dribbling past people. But are those things that you necessarily need for Arsenal right now? Maybe not. So it's an interesting conversation to have. I don't think Thomas Partey has no role to play, but I do think his role has been minimized quite a bit because of Rice being such a good player, which is why we spent the money, right? So yeah. John P says, question, do you think moving Odegaard might be a smart? Seen George talking about it a lot. I'm not sure. I've spoken about this before. I'm not moving our best player from the right half space to accommodate Kai Havertz or Emil Smith-Rowe. I don't think either of them have done enough to show that we should move our best player and captain and disrupt our right-hand side at all to accommodate those two. So I'm not doing it. I would do it for a player of elite status that we know only can play on the right. And then you're like, okay, Odegaard, maybe move him to the left. But I just don't see any reason to do it. I feel like people are trying to find a way to get those two in the team. But the way that they're going to get in the team and ultimately play games for Arsenal is just by being better. And hopefully we recruited properly and Kai is actually better on the left, because if we spent 65 million on a player that is better on the right, then we've ultimately wasted the money anyway. So no, I'm not moving Odegaard to the left. Not for anybody that's not elite. I'm not doing it. Kevy Kev says, hello, 1-0 to the Arsenal. Exactly. Make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Now, let's talk about my boy, Fabio. Robbed of an assist, by the way. I was just typing my tweet, because I got them ready, my Fabio Vieira tweets, because we've been eating very well lately, Fabio Hive. You guys can still be a part of the fan club. Send your application. We are accepting them in very small quantities, okay? But I thought, all in all, he had a good performance today. Not spectacular. I think there's still some moments where I wanted him to shoot quicker. I thought that one ball that came to him on the back post, I thought just hit that first time. He had a couple of block shot moments, but I think ultimately for a game that people were shitting themselves about him not being able to withstand the physicality of Goodison Park, I thought he was good. It's a shame that we didn't get to see more of him and Martinelli, because their combining is really good. They have, obviously they're besties off the pitch, but they have a great balance on the pitch. And it kind of stopped a little bit when Trossard came out there, because I think Trossard and Vieira want to do similar things. Neither of them want to be on the touchline. Neither of them want to run into space. They both want to come a little bit more central and create. So they were kind of repetitive on that side. But ultimately, I thought Vieira was good. Not spectacular, not, but for somebody that came in and replaced somebody who has kind of been in the lower, ebb, I thought he was quite good. So I don't like, if I had to choose a team for next week, I'd probably still choose Fabio Vieira and want to build on what he gave us in this game. So I'm gonna give Fabio Vieira probably a 6.5. It wasn't like, I can't give him more than that because he didn't get an assist or a goal. And he still had some moments where I thought he could have done better, but he put one ball really nicely across the six, and nobody was there. And I thought that's what he does so well, is that he understands where the danger areas are and he puts the ball right there. I thought his dead ball delivery was quite good today. Fabio Vieira, 6.5, but ultimately the conversation around him for me is that he is no longer the player that we need to be afraid to play. He is a valuable member of the squad now, and so we can leave that shit behind. That's my guy. Kevy Keb says, I agree. I'm giving Fabio a 7. John P says a 6. The Shake says 6.5 for Fabio. Still needs to improve a lot and is slow. He's never going to get faster. So if you mean he needs to get faster in speed in terms of his running, that's not going to happen. He's never going to be fast. But in terms of maybe his decision making, I think everybody could speed up a little bit. But I agree with you on the 6.5. Needs some improvement, but for the first start of the season, I am not complaining. Faisal says Fabio Vieira just needs a run of games when people would want him in every game. I think in UCL he would shine more. John P says, I think Fabio was good, but I will say if Havertz missed those chances, I wonder what would be said. Yeah. I mean, Fabio Vieira didn't miss a sitter that was just like sitting right there. He missed like a volley, that he didn't even miss it. He tried to pass it instead of shooting. So I'm not sure if you guys can remind me of like a sitter that Fabio Vieira missed, then I would agree more. But I think ultimately, especially like getting on the ball, being a part of buildup and things like that, I thought Fabio offered more than Kai. He tends to be in the way when we're building up or not be available at all. And with a game where you have 80% possession, you need to have players that are not afraid to get on the ball and not afraid to put the final pass in and not afraid to like do, to be on the ball basically. And so I never thought it was a Kai game, by the way, because I just felt like we're going to have all this possession and we need our technicians out there. Ultimately, I think if he gets that assist, people are maybe a little bit more happy with his performance because he did have some chances to like maybe shoot a little bit sooner, but he didn't miss a sitter. And like, so I'm just saying. Tony says Fabio Vieira's fan club application submitted. I will look it over and see if you are the right fit. Norma says a 7 for Fabio. Especially for like his first start of the season. Like obviously we want to see him build on this. Good player. I like him. Samuel says 6.5. The main thing that concerns me is his physicality. Keenan says we need ESR to get some minutes as well. Still no minutes. That's very significant. I think if you're not getting any minutes, not even 5, not even 10, and they keep buying players to play in the position that you're supposedly playing, for me, the writing's on the wall for Emile Smith-Rowe, but that's just me. Tony says Fabio Vieira did snatch at his shots today. Usually does better with his shots. And I think it was maybe just like the pressure of starting. And this is where you want to give somebody maybe a run of games in order so that they can relax. Because I think sometimes when you feel like this might be your one and only opportunity, you do snatch at shots. You do get a little bit like over eager sometimes. I would like to see him get a run of games, but if I had to guess what's going to happen, I do think Kai Havertz will come back in for Tottenham. I would like Fabio Vieira to play against PSV. I think that's another good game for him where there's a lot of space and we're going to need some creativity. They're not overly physical or anything like that for the people that are like physicality. So for me, Fabio Vieira, I think I would start him again against PSV. But maybe Kai comes back in. Who knows? John P says he is going to be a final action monster. I feel the more playing time he gets, the better he'll be. Samuel says, is this for real Fabio fan club? Yes, it is. No, I'm just joking. It's not, but it's in my head and I'm always the president of it. And I just remember the days where I was getting killed on here and now we're in the sun, y'all. We're in the sun. Stone says that his physicality held up against Everton's AFCON midfield. And that is the last comment we need on that. But good performance, nothing to really write home about, but definitely um, a player that's growing and needs to be nurtured, because I think, when players are playing well and then they're just on the bench again, you kill that momentum of that player growing. And I kind of think that happened with Trossard a little bit. Obviously, he gets the winning goal today. Um, but when he was playing well, he didn't get rewarded with the playing time. And I think he has lost a little bit of confidence at Arsenal. That is a quality player that we have. That talent and that like confidence needs to be nurtured, not shut off. Um, Unfortunately for Martinelli, his goal was called off, but that's what I love about Martinelli. He gets into those positions and he usually puts them away. He is a natural goal scorer. I think people forget that. I think he was having a decent game before he went off injured. Hopefully, it's not anything too bad, but it's just the mix on that side doesn't really work as well without him, because he stretches the game. He's more direct. He wants to receive, where most of the players that you want behind him are players that want to create. And so my fear is with not having him that we'll have too many players that want to create and not enough player, like nobody that's going to can run into space and add that balance to Saka on the other side. And so it's really unfortunate that he got that injury. But the chance that he put away, I thought he did really good for it, even though it was called offside. I'm just hoping it's not anything bad. So I'm just going to give Martinelli a 7. He had like one pass where he just kicked it out of bounds, and I was like, "What are you doing?" But other than that, like I just hope he's this is not a player that we can lose right now before PSV, Tottenham, and Manchester City. I know Trossard could do a really good job. I'm not saying that he can't, but you just miss a little bit of something up there in terms of like your dynamism. And because we know against like Manchester City and against Tottenham and against PSV, will have more space. He would be so good in those games. I am worried that that's going to be like a couple weeks out, but we'll see. Love Martinelli. I hope he's okay. John P says, great goal. No idea why it's offside. Came off an Everton player. I need to see it again, but a lot of people are saying it came off of an Everton player. T01 says, any news on Martinelli? Not yet. I can actually check online now just to make sure there hasn't been any updates. But from what I saw before, there wasn't anything. So let's see. My stomach is growling. He felt something in his hammy. So it's a hamstring. So we already know hamstrings are not great. So yeah, I'm hoping that it's not as bad as maybe we're thinking at this point. Stone says we still have Reese. Martin N says, I'm the treasurer of the Fabio Vieira fan club. Send me your membership fee if you want to join. That's where you need to send the money. There is a fee associated with being a part of this club. Okay. John P says a minimum of 4 weeks. That I don't want to say it's like, I don't want to do that. It's a huge blow, but it kind of is. Denver says, I wouldn't mind giving Reese some games either, to be fair. So if you want to keep that same dynamism on that side, you want to play Reese. But Trossard is ahead of him in the pecking order and probably just about deserves the playing time more than Reese. So it's a big decision to make. They can split the time. Reese can play against PSV and against maybe like Bournemouth, and Trossard can play against Man City and Tottenham. We also have the game against Brentford that Reese can play in. So what I want against the better teams is I want experience and players that if they get one chance, we know they're going to put it in the back of the net. Against the other teams, it's fine to have Reese out there because he does have quality. And again, another player who, if you're going to give him that new contract, he needs playing time. But it's unfortunate for Martinelli, isn't it? So let's talk about Saka for a little bit. He was kind of coupled in with my feelings on Odegaard. I just think he got an assist, which he kind of always does that even when he's not having the best game. But again, our right-hand side is just not performing at its highest level. And when I say our right-hand side, I mean Odegaard and Bukayo Saka. Our two best players are like, they create everything good for Arsenal. Rightly or wrongly, that is it for us on that side. And so Saka just hasn't really hit the levels yet. We had this conversation before. Is he playing poorly? No. But is this his level by his standards? No. Like, he definitely is not beating his man. I think he looks a little, I don't want to say jaded, but beyond the goal that he scored against Nottingham Forest, I haven't seen a lot of that like guile and that energy from Saka that he's so like we're still used to seeing. And maybe there's a little bit of burnout there, maybe not. I'm sure he'll come back into form, but for me, it was just not a great performance from Saka. I'm just gonna give him um like what did I give Odegaard? Like a 6, same thing, like a 6. He got an assist, but we know when we're watching a good Saka game, and that was not one of them. And maybe he needs a rest. Maybe he needs competition for his spot. I think the reason why you always see him play so well for England is because he knows, like, there are players that could potentially take your position. At Arsenal, he is so safe and so like the only guy there that it's up to him to keep up the motivation to go again. And so I'm just not seeing enough from the right hand side that I am just saying that they're going to get to that place eventually and it'll click and they'll come back into form. But I am a little bit underwhelmed by the performances that I've seen from both Martin Odegaard and Bukayo Saka so far, because we know that they can play so much better. Um, Tell me this, I'll tell you this. Says it was a really good result as all of our attackers had below average games, yet able to get 3 points and a clean sheet. Saka 6 out of 10 for sure. Samuel says, I didn't want to say it, but is it a sign of burnout? We'll never really know if it's burnout or not. We can assume or guess or have an opinion that it's burnout, but we don't actually know. It could just be Saka's just not playing well. Players go in and out of form. Sometimes it's not due to anything physically. It's just they're not playing well. And so I don't want to say for sure that's what it is because I don't know, but it could be because he's played so many minutes for Arsenal. So yeah, the Sheikh says Arteta has burnt Saka out. It's not about competition, but it could be. You know, you're assuming that it's burnout, but he could be completely fine physically. It could be he's complacent. We don't actually know for sure. We can have opinions, but I don't think we're privy to enough information to say for sure it's burnout, for sure it's a lack of competition. Maybe it's a combination of both. Tony says Saka 6.5. It's always hard to evaluate Saka when the opponent is way overloaded on his side defensively. And the one thing that I will say is I think it was actually disgusting that the ref on the touchline and the center ref did not see that reducer that Mikalenko put on Saka. The one thing that I notice is every time we play Everton, Mikalenko is allowed to kind of do whatever to Saka, and Saka's just supposed to hop back up and say, I'm just happy to be here. No, like absolutely not. That was an awful tackle. And I think if you rewatch it, it's definitely a yellow. It's orange. Like it was totally like too much force, high, out of control from behind. And they acted like they didn't see it. And I'm just like, okay, but anytime we touch somebody, it's like tweet, tweet, yellow. Like Gabriel got a yellow card for nothing. Like that's not a yellow card, but they couldn't see the tackle that Mikalenko put on Saka. That's awful. It's crap. Hal says Arteta needs to have some common sense and rest Saka, even if he tells Arteta he can play. Stefan says, question, I still think regardless that we are not playing well, we still get results. I still think regardless that we are not playing well, we still get results. We kind of talked about that at the beginning, at the top of the show, that right now we are getting results despite not playing at our tip-top best. It's yet to be seen if we get to that best. But I would imagine that glass half full, we're gonna get there. We're just slowly cooking into the season, and that's fine. Getting results is the most important thing. Keenan, I don't know if y'all can hear my stomach, but whew. Keenan says, yeah, how was Mikalenko not red carded? I just when I watched it back, I was like, that's a yellow card and it's orange too. Like it's very forceful, it's high, it's out of control, and it's from behind. But it was just kind of like not only did they not call, like they acted like, what is your job? Like, your job is to see it. How do you not see somebody slide into somebody? Like, it's weird that the fourth official, the touchline ref and the center ref, none of them saw that reducer. Like, it was strange. PG says Jim Beglin on commentary was so biased. I mean, they were telling them to just kick us down, and they were willing them to score a goal, and I was just like, F off. I don't hear any, commentary coaching the other team when Man City is playing. Like, shut up. Ify said, I saw 10 defenders for Everton today. It's sometimes tough for our wingers to do their thing. Fair enough. Tell me this, I'll tell you this. Says Saka gets his break when we play Brentford in the Carabao Cup, but for now, he must play the next 190 minutes. So hopefully we will see if he gets that rest. But for today, he gets a 6. This may seem harsh, but I'm just going to keep it real. I'm desperate for Jesus to get up to full fitness, because Nketiah, for me, like he was at the Manchester United game, just didn't offer that much. I think against teams that are going to sit in these low blocks, we need to really kind of maximize those front positions, because those players need to be able to operate in small areas, provide a little bit of creativity. And I think Eddie just does not have that in his game. So not a bad player, did not play horrendous, but does not offer what we need in games where we're sitting, like, where they're sitting back and we just need to be able to break them down. I thought he was very kind of like, he had a very anonymous game today. He had like one shot that was blocked. Like, he just offered very little. And because he also doesn't offer the ability to be fluid up front and switch positions, we're just kind of stationary and very flat up there. And we've kind of been like that all season. And, I've been saying this since I just think like Jesus needs to get up to full fitness, because he offers us something so different. Now, I don't think Jesus even had a very good game today, but you see him from the start. I think, we start off a lot better. Now, Eddie is unlucky to be offside for the Martinelli goal, which I thought was good work from him. But ultimately, beyond that, I can't think of much that he did, much that he offered. And I think it was pretty much like a blank space up there. There just wasn't anything to play off of. And in small spaces, he just doesn't thrive. Like, we know that that's not Eddie's game. So I'm going to give him a 6. I think everybody up front, Odegaard, Saka, and Nketiah did not have amazing games. And, I think Eddie's is more of ill fit than not playing that well, if that makes sense. I think it's more just these games don't suit him. They don't suit him. Hall says still Nketiah offers more than Havertz. I mean, he can offer more than Havertz, but Havertz is not playing center forward, so I'm comparing him to what we would get if Jesus was playing up there. So yeah, he can offer more than Havertz in terms of, trying to win the ball back and win duels. But I don't necessarily think Nketiah had like a game, like, how do I describe it? Like, his last really good game, I think, was Fulham. That's where you saw like the best out of Nketiah. I think he came off the bench. That was the best you've seen from Nketiah this season, I think. Since then, like, we played against Manchester United. He was quite anonymous, I thought, in that game, as well. Like, not anonymous, but like he just wasn't effective. And again, today he was ineffective. So, offering a little bit more than Kai doesn't mean that Eddie was effective. Like, he just wasn't. Roxy says Eddie was too rubbish. He just didn't offer anything. Really. John P says Fabio made 2 crosses I expect a striker to get on the end of. Fabio beat the keeper twice. Danny says Eddie is a 6. He didn't get the chance to show us what he's got because there was absolutely no creativity around him. Eddie made a few good runs on the ball, went backwards every time. It's just not his game. And I am desperate for Jesus to get into full fitness. Kevy Kev says Eddie is a defender's dream. I mean, on a day like this where there's 2 giants there and everything is in front of them, and yeah, it just wasn't a game for him. Anton Dunn says when Jesus drops a 5.5, he doesn't get this level of ridicule. Just keep it moving. Could do better. Tony says Eddie was fine, kept moving off the ball, but against a low block, trying to create space. 6, exactly. So, and I would disagree about the comment about Jesus not getting as much ridicule when he has a bad game. Literally, if Jesus misses any chance, people are on him like white on rice. So I actually, because I'm such a big fan of Gabriel Jesus, I think I see more of the Jesus slander. He was absolutely cooked last season at the end of it for missing chances and not being a traditional number 9. Jesus gets some of the worst criticism in this team. Eddie gets it too, but to say like Jesus doesn't get, he misses one chance and it's over. So yeah, I actually disagree with that. I think Jesus gets a pretty bad, and also the player that's not playing is always world class, so if Jesus is playing and he's missing chances, people want Eddie back in. If Eddie's not playing well, then they want Jesus back in. Like, that's just kind of the game. But Jesus gets killed as well. So there you go. In terms of the subs, I don't think anybody really did that well off of the bench. I thought like Trossard, obviously he gets the goal and he's like the main guy. I actually gave him man of the match just because he scored the goal. And I don't think anybody else stood out. Like, it could have been Rice too. But Trossard, the goal, it's just a sweet goal from Trossi. I think he's a player that I think you can see he's low on confidence. That's what happens when a player is playing well and you don't play them, they lose confidence. And so Trossard, he's a fantastic player and we need to nurture that confidence and like use him. No, he's not like Saka or Martinelli. He doesn't offer that dynamism, but he offers something that you fucking need, and that's goals and assists, and experience, and somebody that backs themselves in difficult scenarios. And so I'm glad he got that goal. I think he needed it. It's with his left foot, by the way, left foot, right foot. It doesn't matter. The guy is so good. And I thought he grew into the game. He had a couple shaky moments early, but for me, I'm going to give Trossard a 7.5. Got the goal, got the winning goal, worked through his difficult moments early on in the game, and ultimately came out with the winner, and is a player that I think deserves more playing time. Always felt that way. I just don't think you can allow a player like Trossard to just rot on your bench. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, he's just too good. And he gives you the most important thing in football, which is goals and assists. So yeah, I want to see the Trossard that came in last season. He was full of confidence and his confidence level has dropped. Not a really surprise. Anton Dunn says Trossard is more unpredictable than Martinelli, so I'm not mad he's around. Kevy Kev says Trossard 7.5, great finish. Tony says Trossard's shot was damn good, 7.5. Stone says Trossard is a midfielder, not a winger. Exactly. I say he's a creative forward. You can be there's wingers like Doku and like Saka and players like that, and then you have like forwards, and I think Trossard is more of a creative forward. You have wing forwards, you have all different types of players that play up there, but ultimately if you get him in your front 5, he's going to offer you goals and assists if you use him properly and you let him get some minutes, and that's what's most important. He's always going to be different than Martinelli and offer something different, and maybe that's why he doesn't get enough playing time, is because he's so different than Martinelli. But I'm like, use that shit, man. Like, get the best out of the team that you have. Like, the guy is too good to just be rotting on the bench. So yeah, Shake says 9 for Trossard. John P says the subs were tactically good today. I think the Zinchecko out, Tomiyasu in substitution really works for us because Zinchecko can do his due, but he's pretty much dead on the 60th minute anyway, and we're usually holding on to a lead by that time. So bringing in somebody like Tomiyasu allows you to just shut the game down, close it down. I think Tomiyasu's cameos are always quite good, especially when he's at a good fitness level. So yeah, the subs were good, and we're seeing some patterns now. Like Kai came in and closed down the game and did some good recoveries of the ball and stuff. So yeah, we're seeing some patterns, and I like that. Tell me this, I'll tell you this, as Trossard and Saka did so well for that goal, creating space for each other. Overall, the goal was great set piece play goal. Dale Carragher says, hopefully the goal for Belgium and today's goal will jumpstart Trossard. I hope so as well. John P says, would like to see Zinchecko overlap a few more times if Trossard is playing. So he can come more central and get him some more space. I like that. Crispy says, when Tommy comes on, the final 2 minutes, it's 20 minutes is shut down. You guys, isn't that better than, like, no offense, but like Rob Holding coming in with a 4-5-1? I mean, we have upgraded more, like, in terms of like closing down the game means bringing in Jorginho and Tamiyasu. It's not El Neni and Holding. So we are doing better in that regard. And I think that's why we're getting better results. So I love that. Yeah, in terms of like the other cameos, like I'll just give Jesus a 5.5 because I don't think he was great. I did think he got kind of wrapped up in the emotions of getting, bashed over the head by Tarkovsky and stuff like that. And he didn't really have enough minutes to like make anything happen, really. I thought he should have did better for the Gabriel pass. So I'll give him a 5.5. It is what it is. And ultimately, you guys, we broke the curse. And that's the most important thing. Breaking that curse and making sure that we don't have to hear Arsenal haven't won here in 1,000 years. Everton were awful, but again, we've lost to some awful teams in the past. So walking away with the dub, 1-0, who cares what it is, clean sheet, we did it. And hopefully everything clicks down at some point. But yeah, you guys, it's been a pleasure speaking to you guys after the game. You guys can see in the pinned message, if you want to support the channel, you can in several different ways. One, you can become a patron, and that's more of a long-term deal. But if you just want to support the channel on a one-term deal, you can always super chat, but you can also just buy me a coffee. I'm a big coffee person. You guys should know that by now. But also, the post-match podcast is going to be coming out tomorrow about midday. I'm going to be recording that later on tonight in the morning with That's Watson. So you guys will get a notification if you guys are subscribed to the channel about that coming out. It should be a hilarious show. So yeah, and I will figure out a time to do the rewatch as well because I want to rewatch it with you guys on Patreon. So if you guys become a patron, you guys will be able to see a rewatch as well. I'm not original. Everybody does a rewatch. Arsenal Vision do rewatches. I know the different knock does rewatches. I'm doing rewatches. I'm not original. Sue me. So yeah, you guys, I've really enjoyed talking to you guys. If you guys want to do Arteta rating, we can do that. I'll add that to this. This is kind of like, we haven't done player ratings in a while, so I knew I forgot something. But if I had to give Arteta a rating, I would just give him an 8. Like, we won. I think he set up the team to win. I didn't see a team out there that could not beat Everton. I thought we had a good team out there that could break down the deep block. It took us longer than it probably should have. His substitutions are what really made the game better. I thought the substitution, getting Eddie out, getting Jesus on, getting Zinchecko off, getting Tamiyasu on, those things helped us. As well as, Kai, I thought did offer something a little bit in terms of like winning duels and things like that. He didn't get a yellow. He did his thing, and he did not have to fall in. He did not have to fall into the media trap later on of them asking him about Raya because we did not win the game. So it's yet to be seen whether or not this goalkeeper switch makes us better or makes us worse. But so far, so good. So I can only give Arteta 8. We won. And he led us to a victory. We should have won that game. There's no reason not to. So he did a good job. There's nothing really I can say bad, about Arteta today. But I'll find something if I have to. Tony says a 9 out of 10 for Arteta. Fabio Vieira was a big call. Raya was a big call. Subs were perfect. I agree. Ivy says a 9 for Teta. Subs were great. Keenan says 8.5 for Teta. Crispy says, 9 for me, made the right change in the squad, barring Nketiah starting. Samuel says Rice just got voted man of the match. It's a fan's vote. Yes. Roxy says Arteta gets a 6.5. No way, 8. Fair enough. Keenan says not a masterclass, but solid team setup. Exactly. So yeah, you guys, I will see you guys later. Like I said, you guys will get a post-match podcast. Oh, it's pre-recorded, so it's not live or anything, but you guys will get that tomorrow midday. But you guys know I always show up at 4 p.m. UK time, Monday through Friday. Those are the live shows that are more news shows. So we'll do that. I love you guys, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Bye, y'all. I'm so hungry.